The Chamber, composed of Judge Fulford from the United Kingdom, Judge Odio Benito from Costa Rica, and Judge René Blatman from Bolivia, has released the ICC's first decision that establishes the principles of reparations. These fundamental principles will guide the reparations proceedings and decisions in the case against Mr. Thomas Lubanga Dyilo. In accordance with these principles, the Chamber should ensure that reparations do not discriminate with respect to the victim's age, ethnicity, or gender. Furthermore, the reparations should aim at reconciling the victims of child recruitment with their families and communities in Ituri, while preserving their dignity and privacy. Moreover, the reparations measure should take into account the age of the victims, the harms they may have suffered, including sexual violence, and the need to rehabilitate the former child soldiers within their communities. The trial chamber has also established the procedure that needs to be implemented in order to determine the scope and nature of the reparations for the victims. In its decision, the trial chamber established the process by which the victims will receive reparations. The Chamber endorsed the proposal of the Trust Fund for Victims, which is a plan that, in essence, lays the groundwork to enable the later decision on the reparations programs and any grants that are to be made to the victims. First, the Trust Fund, along with the Registry, the Office of Public Counsel for Victims, and a multidisciplinary team of experts, including local experts from the Democratic Republic of Congo and international experts, will identify which localities in the Democratic Republic of Congo should take part in the reparations process. Because the Chamber considers it is of paramount importance that the victims, together with their families and communities, participate in the reparations process and express their own points of view and priorities, a consultation process will take place in those localities. Thereafter, proposals for reparations that will ultimately be advanced by the victims themselves will be collected and presented to the judges of the ICC for evaluation and approval. Finally, reparations will then be implemented with the resources of the Trust Fund for Victims that are available for this purpose. As an advocate for victims, the Trust Fund plays a critical role in the ICC. Its primary function is to mobilize individuals and institutions to collect and administer resources for the benefit of the victims and their communities. Specifically, the goal is to found and set up innovative projects to meet the victims' physical, material, and psychological needs. The Trust Fund for Victims may also directly undertake other activities when requested by the court. Once the reparations proposals are received and presented to the judges, the Trust Fund for Victims will determine not only the appropriate scope and nature of the reparations, but also how to implement them in Ituri. The Trust Fund for Victims is already conducting extensive activity in the Democratic Republic of Congo for the benefit of victims in the context of the DRC situation. Although the Chamber has determined in its decision that reparations can be either individual or collective in the Lubanga case, due to significant limitations, the Chamber has decided that reparations should be implemented via the Trust Fund for Victims. The Trust Fund has indicated that collective and community-based approach could be more beneficial and have greater utility than individual awards. It is important to highlight that Mr. Lubanga has been declared indigent and the Trust Fund has limited resources. Thus, the best approach in this particular case is collective reparations. Although the Chamber has not assessed the individual applications for reparations that have been received thus far, it has instructed that such applications should be sent to the Trust Fund. Ultimately, individual victims will benefit from any collective reparations that are implemented through the Trust Fund. The Chamber has decided that, in principle, the nature of reparations as provided for in the statute, namely restitution, compensation and rehabilitation of the victims, are all applicable to the present case. The Chamber has also anticipated that other forms of reparations, such as symbolic reparations, may be appropriate. For example, it is the view of the Chamber that the conviction and the sentence against Thomas Lubanga Dyilo are examples of relevant symbolic reparations, given that they are likely to have significance for the victims and their families and communities. Other forms of reparations include campaigns to improve the position of victims, issuing certificates that acknowledge the harm suffered by victims, and outreach and promotional activities, along with educational programs which provide information and are directed at reducing the stigmatization and marginalization of the victims without discrimination of any kind. Reparations may be granted to direct and indirect victims who suffer harm because of the crimes of enlistment, conscription and use of children under the age of 15 to actively participate in hostilities in Ituri from 1 September 2002 to 13 August 2003. This also includes the family members of direct victims, along with individuals who intervene to help the victims or to prevent the commission of the crimes. It is important to highlight that all the victims are to be treated fairly and equally, regardless of whether they participated in the proceedings or filed individual applications for reparations. They can all benefit from the reparation programs. Reparations should reach the widest possible group of victims, including those who have not been identified by the court. Mr. Lubanga has been declared indigent and no assets or property referable to him have been identified to date. It is open to Mr. Lubanga to volunteer an apology to the victims on a public or a confidential basis. However, symbolic and non-monetary reparations on his part can only occur with his agreement. As previously stated, the Chamber considers that reparations should be implemented through the Trust Fund for Victims, albeit within the limitations of its resources. In order for the reparations award to take effect, the ICC requires the cooperation of state parties and non-state parties, as well as the close cooperation of the Democratic Republic of Congo and the local government. It is necessary that the Trust Fund receives sufficient voluntary contributions to implement meaningful and efficient reparation programs.